Hello and welcome to Noni, your morning chat show that brings you the topics we're all talking about. Today we ask if black people can be racist and why some in our community are being deemed as sellouts. We'll be hearing what you think with your comments and views. Joining me on today's show, writer and presenter Lola Ogunbadejo and YANGA's roving reporter Tosin Yusuf. Now, the word racism means prejudice, discrimination or antagonism against someone of a different race based on the belief that one's own race is superior. So if racism is all about superiority, then history suggests black people are unlikely to be racist, at least towards white people. But are we more outspoken about other minority groups? And then there's so-called reverse racism. Movements like Black History Month, Black Girls Rock and the hashtag Black Lives Matter are perceived as racist by some. Now, ladies, I'm not surprised. On our social media network, we've had a lot of people flooding in with their comments. One person, Ieritoma Teme, said no, black people cannot be racist, but only prejudiced. They do not possess the power, wealth and influence to be a racist. That's quite a strong opinion on racism. So do you agree with that or not, Tosin?
It depends on your definition of racism. If you define racism as the prejudice or discrimination and hatred towards a different race, then individual black people can be racist. But if you define racism as a system where a group or a race is have disproportionate power in society, then definitely then black people cannot be racist collectively.
What do you define as racism, Lola?
And the oppression of a marginalised ethnic group, and when we think of black people, we can definitely see that we have been oppressed throughout the years, and some people believe that it's impossible for black people to be racist because we don't have the power, just like the tweet you read, we don't have the power or the will to oppress people either mentally, spiritually, emotionally or physically. So that is my definition of racism.
I remember when the hashtag Black Lives Matter came out, I kind of agreed with a lot of the hashtags, but I daren't post it on my social media because I felt like I could be isolating some of my very dear white friends and colleagues, because I kind of felt like if I'm, supporting Black Lives Matter, does that then mean that not all lives matter? And I kind of had a debate with myself about that. Can you understand why some people have felt that the hashtag Black Lives Matter is racist or is segregating white people?
Well, I believe we've been cushioned from a very young age. For example, when I was young, I was always informed that you have to be very careful what you say and what you do because of your skin color and the fact that you're a woman. So when the hashtag came out, and I understand your point of view that you're probably thinking this might, segregate or offend some of my people, but then that's how I've been raised to believe that I have to be very careful in terms of race relations for offending my white counterparts. And I think this was the hashtag was a great example of showing that actually, do you know what, we do have opinions, we do care about our lives, we think it's important for other people to care about us as well, as much as we care about you. Because in terms of things like police brutality, it wasn't really as much as an issue with our white counterparts as it was with us. And so therefore we were just making a stance. So I hoped, I didn't actually put that out there as well, the hashtag or anything like that.
So you understood,
I understood, but then I also hoped that my friends who were white and other white people would understand the importance of the hashtag. It wasn't to be racist, it was just to kind of put out that point that we actually do matter.
Yeah, we all lives matter.
All lives matter,
Black Lives Matter was what they were talking about at that time.
Yeah.
Tosin, do you think sitting here, we're in London, we're all African, do you think that our opinion on racism and being black is very, very different from that of an African American, because of course their history and the reason why they're even in America is very different than ours? Definitely.
Comparing the racial climate in the UK compared to the US is so much more.
And it is bad here.
Yeah,
it's bad here, but it's incomparable.
Yeah, in the US it's so much more. It's so much worse. Most police brutality can be found in the US. So it's so much. The racial climate in America is so much more charged than in the UK.
Yeah, charged is a really good term, isn't it? Well, we are here, Lola, in the UK. What about relations between blacks and Asian communities? Because you're in secondary school, you're all best friends, and then something happens, doesn't it? And I think most people will be familiar with this. When you get to college and university, you become less of a unit with your black and Asian friends. You kind of become your own, you kind of stick with your own race. Would you agree with that?
When I was growing up, we were sort of I think we subconsciously were pitched against each other because we had some very
Black
smart
and Asians.
smart Asians, smart blacks, and so in terms of academics, sometimes we would like compete with each other in regards to that retrospect. But I don't think there was an issue. Like, I still have a lot of Asian friends, and I don't think there was any sort of racial tension between myself and my Asian friends as well. So no, I don't think there is.
Do you feel like there's a divide sometimes between Asians and blacks? Because a lot of people watching would say there is.
Definitely. Something happened to a friend of mine. She was walking on the street and an Asian just like screamed at her the N-word, and it was really appalling, honestly, because at the end of the day, race is actually a division between the human race. Everyone is the same. Race is what divides us, and that's what we're trying to, come against in today. Like, don't look at people's skin color. It's not about people's skin color or their race. It's about the individuals themselves. So once we can go past that even if looking at interracial couples and stuff, when you're dating someone, you're dating the person, you're dating an individual. You're not dating their race. You're not dating their skin color. So when we can move past looking at people's skin colors and their race, then we can definitely get past racism.
That's a nice way of looking at it. Let me ask you this question, Lola. Do you think social media kind of harbours and allows for black movements and black groups to have certain views that perhaps if you were a white person you would never get away with?
Yes, definitely. I remember when Black Panther came out, that whole Wakanda Forever movement was epic. It got on all
There were so many memes, right?
Exactly. And I just think it was so powerful because it allowed us as people to see why stuff like this is so important, the type of representation that we really need in the media. And I think it's important that we have a voice. I think a lot of people have felt sort of like confined and not allowed to really speak their truth and speak about their experience. I know some people have said their experience or talked about their experience in a way that many might see as, oh, this is like rude, or this is obnoxious, or this is too much. I've heard people say that, why can't we just get over it? Or why are we still talking about it so many years later? But I think the fact that it's still prevalent, that we still need to put it out there, is because there's stuff still being done.
Yes, and there's lots to talk about on this topic, and we are going to continue that. Coming up, we will continue with this discussion on whether you can be black and racist, and why are some in our community being accused of being a sellout. We'll be hearing your stories and experiences more after the break. Welcome back to Noni. Still to come on today's show, why are some in our community being called sellouts? But first, we return to the question, can you be black and racist? And if we are, what's the best way to tackle the very thing we've been fighting for centuries? Lola, I would say, if we was in America, this conversation would be very, very different. But I must ask, do you think we need to kind of get over the whole slavery thing?
Oh, I think definitely if we was to ask this question in America, there would be a lot of heat. I personally do not think it is ever going to be possible to fully get over the slavery thing, because we're still seeing the effects of it.
Like what?
In today's day and age. Just the fact that many people, like I was saying, like when I was growing up, I was told by different, people, different family members, that you need to be really careful about things you say, things you do, because remember, you're black and the system doesn't favor you. So you have to really, really work hard at school, get those grades, because
work harder than your peers.
Work harder, exactly. Try your best to be like them in some retrospect, speak like them, act appropriately, whatever that meant to them. And it kind of shows me that regardless of what happened back then, I'm still, and probably, I hope not, but my kids and their kids and their kids might still have to go through this whole mental slavery thing. I think now the physical part has gone, but now the mental part still remains to some.
Gosh, it's really deep, and it's actually really worrying. But Tosin, coming from Nigeria, how does slavery and racism seen on the continent? And when you came to the UK, did you feel that, gosh, black people do really have a chip? Or could you understand the kind of segregation between blacks and whites and Asians?
Obviously, I grew up in Nigeria, so I never really had to think about, you know, my skin color, my complexion, because we were all black, they were all African. So I never really suffered like going to a job interview and being like, gosh, oh, I'm black, I hope I get this job because of my race. But coming here, it's a lot different. When I came here, applying for like jobs, I had to like kind of shorten my name to kind of westernize it, make it
Why?
more...
Why did you feel like you had to do that?
I kind of felt like, you know, if they see a name that they can't barely pronounce, can she even speak properly and all of that? It's just, it's all about internal racism, and that's how when people believe the white race is superior, how they talk is proper and how we talk is somehow not proper.
Do you deem that as racism, or do you see that as, you know, you just being in a British culture? So, you know, as they say, do as the Romans do.
It is racism because we're all different. We're from different parts of the world. We speak differently. We have different names. So there's no reason why a particular race should be superior and everyone should be trying to act like a particular race or be like a particular race to, you know, please anyone.
So, you know, listening to what Tosin just said then, so if you've been a victim of this and you've suffered under this, surely you're less likely to perpetuate that, or not?
Well, I think I totally agree with what she just said. I think when I have my children or when I speak to other people, I do encourage them to be themselves, to not try and conform to what they think is what is necessary to be able to live and abide in this society, in this culture. But I also agree partly with what she said in regards to when I was born and raised here, and so there were many times when I got calls for job interviews, for example. I remember one time there was a man who said to me, oh, you sound really white. Even though I put my name there and everything, Lola Ogunbadejo, he saw me and he was surprised. He was like, oh, you sounded white on the phone.
Would you say that was racist?
Well, he actually was a racist because some of the things he used to say was crazy. But I just think it's just like, you know, as I was born and raised here, I understood that, you know, naturally I'm going to have a British accent, and maybe the way I was raised as well by my parents, we were very sort of like, they weren't the typical, I wasn't raised in the typical Nigerian way, so I was just brought up to talk like this and to speak like this.
And you speak very nicely.
Thank
Let me
you.
just ask you a question. Do black people sometimes have a chip on their shoulder then? You know, anything happens, oh, they're racist. You know, you don't get into a club, it's racism. You know, you don't get a job, it's because they're racist. Yeah. Is it a chip? Is it something that we just need to get over and move on and just try our best?
I don't think we can ever get over it till the issue is actually addressed. If there's still police brutality going on and there's still like impartiality in workplaces and all of that, we can never get past racism because there's still a problem to be addressed. But I definitely think that, you know, I always say this, but I'm always careful to say it's not everything comes all the way back to racism. Like, I'm going to talk about a rapper called Meek Mill, and he violated his probation and he ended up going back to prison, and then a lot of people were like, racism, the system. I was like, but you violated your probation. Yes,
but I suppose hip-hop fans will talk about, you know, the state that he comes from in America, and they have, you know, a black person could go to prison for a certain number of years for doing the same crime as a white person. So I suppose in America it's very, very different, isn't it? But really interesting subject, ladies, and I'm sure it's another topic we'll revisit later in the season. Now, why are some in our community being called sellouts? It's not a new term, but it's reared its head again recently. Having certain political affiliations, dating outside your race, and such can be construed by some as selling out. For example, rapper Kanye West causing controversy with his comments on slavery. But isn't everyone entitled to their own opinion and to live the way they want to? Or does the colour of your skin and culture define the way we should be? Lola, do you feel like there's too much pressure for black people, black women, to live towards a certain stereotype?
I think there is, and you know, this whole term sellout, I remember when I was in secondary school, and sellout was kind of similar to being called a coconut, being called a Malteser, Bounty, where you're sort of disassociating yourself from your black culture, from speaking black or from acting black. And I felt like, because I remember I had a friend actually.
What is speaking black?
I know, this is the thing, like, again, when I was in secondary school, I had a really lovely friend, and she was really into bands like Hanson, and
That's Mbap.
yeah, Mbap, and we had, you know, the girls who were sort of from Southeast London, grew up around, you know, that sort of area, and they would speak like, yeah, do you know what I'm saying, kind of thing, and she was very sort of prim and proper, and they were like, oh, you're a sellout, you're a Malteser because you're speaking Queen's English, like, what is that about? So they kind of, yeah, it was ridiculous, and I felt like that was awful. But yeah, from that age, I kind of understood that, okay, to some of my black community, if I speak a certain way or act a certain way, I could pretty much be deemed a sellout.
That's really awful, isn't it? Tosin, what's your opinion on this?
I think anyone can be susceptible to that term, being a sellout, because just from your habits and your lifestyle choices, the kind of music you listen to, the places you hang out, your accent and all of that. But I don't think there's any such thing as acting white or acting black. If I'm British, if I was born and raised in Britain and I have a British accent, why does that make me a white person? I'm British.
But it's not the British accent, isn't it? You know, it's what Lola said, it's speaking the Queen's English. You know, it's kind of, so you can be British, but there's certain slangs that you may say wagwan, but you know, if you don't do that, then you're perceived as, you know, selling out. Lola, do you think that this is to do with a certain generation and an age gap? Because I would say at the moment, it's not even really a colour thing for a lot of younger millennials, is it? It's urban. You wouldn't say you're speaking black or you look black, you're urban. So it's talking and speech and your diction is kind of a term for everybody who's like that, would you say?
Yeah, I think, again, from my personal experience, you know, when I was growing up, we were kind of told in secondary school that it's very important that you, because I went to a predominantly black school, and subconsciously they kind of let us know that if you speak like this and you want to get, like, say for example, a high profile job, if you want to be taken seriously, yeah, that actually happened, if you want to be taken seriously, you need to speak a certain way, you need to act a certain way, you need to have professional persona. I even had friends who went for elocution lessons because they really wanted to be able to speak well.
But doesn't that happen whether you're black or not?
It does. But I think in this particular case, of my case, it was just that, you know what, because you're black and we want you to just come away from the stereotypes and all the generalizations of black people speaking like this and acting like this. We want to encourage you to see yourself as prim.
Yeah, because even in this country, you know, if you're politically affiliated to the right, you're considered a coconut. We've seen many, you know, conservative leaders, for example, being, you know, told you're a coconut if you're black or you're Asian, and you climb the ladder in that party. But clearly that's sending the wrong message, isn't it?
Definitely. If they can call it that professional persona, like if you're trying to act professional, then because I'm going to go into an interview and, you know, use slang words and words.
Is it only black people that use slang words?
It's not. It's not. So there's no, honestly, there's no such thing as acting white or acting black.
What about interracial relationships? These have caused a lot of controversy, you know, especially in black Twitter, black social media as it's called. If you see, you know, a handsome black man, a successful black woman with a white partner, you know, they're trashed, aren't they? It's like, oh, you know, you sold out. Why? This is almost racism.
It is sad that does happen. I mean, you should be able to fall in love with whoever you want to fall in love with, whether they're white, black or Asian. But I think sometimes when it comes to black Twitter especially, in some cases, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, sometimes you get these black men sort of saying these derogatory terms about black women, and I think that's where the problem comes in, when you're kind of trying to say that, well, I think these women are more superior or better looking, or it's better to be with, or they're more sort of trophy-esque sort of than black women. That's the thing I personally have a problem.
So you do feel like there are some black people that are purposely selling out or trying to forget or suppress their culture?
Yes, and saying really mean things about black women, making black women out to be always angry, to always be about money, to be shouting all the time. And
surely not.
Exactly, and that's not the case, you know, and I just think it's really unfair to be labelled like that and to be you know, portrayed like that. And I think that's where the anger comes from in regards to black Twitter sometimes. And also sometimes they just feel like some women just think it's unfair. They're like, oh, leave our men alone. You know, we want to be with our men. Why are you with our men? I don't necessarily agree with that. Like I said, you can be with whoever you want to be with. The only issue I have is when you're trying to make black women look a certain way. I mean, I've seen stuff on YouTube, on Instagram, on, you know, Facebook of sort of like, there was one time when this guy was going around saying, this young guy, I'm sure he was about 16, going on the streets of London, asking young boys, like, what do you prefer, lighties or darkies? And most of these boys were probably like 14, and they were saying, these are black boys, we want Latinas, we want Spanish,
oh gosh,
we want
count me out.
Exactly, it was like, nah, and some of them were like, nah, we don't want black girls, we don't want dark girls, and I'm like, wow, like when was that, you know, when did that happen? Yeah.
But do you, Tosin, you know, you spoke earlier about, you know, having to shorten your name to get a job. Do you understand why some black people do sell out and do say, you know, I'm going to squash anything to do with my black culture because I want to succeed, as horrible as that may sound?
Yeah, it's definitely because of the racial climate. When you believe you can't get a job just being yourself, you kind of feel the need to change up your name, the way you talk, your appearance and all of that, just to please, just to get
like
the job you
wearing
want.
long wigs.
Like wearing long wigs and all of. I have a friend, she's mixed race, but she would never like take off her hair or would like wear her natural hair out because she just, she's just kind of still uncomfortable with being that mixed race girl, you know. I'm either white or I'm black. So if I'm not black, she just believes I'm not black enough and I'm not white enough. So she wants to look a certain way to, you know, seem white, which is not very, it's definitely not the best.
Gosh, it seems like, you know, as black women, we've got a lot of hurdles we need to climb. It's a really interesting subject, and I wish we had more time to talk about it, but we don't, I'm afraid, ladies. That's it from me, Juliana Olayinka, and my co-host for the morning, Lola Ogunbadejo and Tosin Yusuf. Don't forget, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Join me next time for more heated Noni chat. Goodbye.